Hi, I'm Jessica Dumas of Prime Image Life Coaching and Indigenous Insight Seminars. Thank you for joining me to watch my Indigenous Insight interviews, where I'm taking my opportunity to interview some of the most amazing Indigenous people that I know. And there's a lot of them, so I apologize if I haven't gotten to you. But the reason that I'm doing this is because the Indigenous community for many, many years has often been shone in a light that is negative or misunderstood. And from what I see is there's so many amazing, talented entrepreneurs, individuals, business people, and just all around really great people. And there's so much that the non-Indigenous community wants to know about us and who are we. So I'm excited to take this opportunity to do that. I'm doing my best to try to do some interviews on Be Live through Facebook Live, but it hasn't really been working out for me, so I apologize for that. I'm sharing an interview right now with myself and Chantal Daniels, who's the owner of Red Cedar Gifts. And unfortunately, we had a great interview, but unfortunately, the method that I was using wasn't able to record both of us during the conversation. So all I have to share with you today, not all I have, but what I have to share with you today is an audio version of the interview. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I love spending time with Chantal, and I'm very thankful and appreciative that she was able to spend her time with me this morning and share this interview. So my website is jessicadumas.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can hopefully find my page if you're watching this video at Jessica Dumas Indigenous Insights, and you can also find the rest of my videos on YouTube. So thank you so much. Please connect with me, especially if you want to share with me some new methods on how I can make this happen. But thank you very much and take care. Good morning, Jessica Dumas, Prime Image Life Coaching and Indigenous Insight Seminars. And I'm doing an Indigenous Insight interview with Chantal Daniels because she's one, a really good friend of mine, and the other reason is I'm just really inspired by the work that she's doing and inspired by the opportunity to share stories of all of the amazing things that I get to see in the Indigenous community and bringing more of an opportunity to share these stories of these amazing people. So I want to introduce Chantal Daniels, who's the owner of Red Cedar Gifts, which is located at 161 Marion Street. Is it a street or avenue? Street. And so I'm going to invite her to tell us a little bit about her store and a little bit about her, and we're going to have a great conversation, and so I'm excited to be sharing that. So good morning, Chantal.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I've done two parent teachers already today, and this interview. I'm
See,
going to the store, so.
and that's a mom in business, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's like. Great. So start telling us about the store, and then we'll go a little bit back and hear more about you.
Okay, so our Red Cedar Gifts is located at, like you said, on 161 Marion. We specialize in kind of unique Aboriginal handmade items. I do a lot of the sewing myself, but I also have other artists that help me as well. So I not only employ myself, but employ my staff of, I have a couple of young Aboriginal women that work there, and then a bunch of Aboriginal artists as well. So my specialty is in star blankets, and I learned from my aunt. So I've been making those for a while, and that's kind of how I got started. Um, yeah,
Very
and that's
nice.
that.
And so I did a little bit of a introduction on when we tried to do the Be Live a little while ago. But one of the things they
Mm-hmm.
shared was someone like you is who people, artists, people who are creating art, they're coming to you because you've already created that connection to consumers, to people buying that. So how do these
Mm-hmm.
people reach you? What is a typical thing that happens?
So I get a lot of phone calls or people just stop by the store. To be honest, the best way is to email me because I'm constantly on the go, so I'm not always in the store all the time. Um, but then, I'll ask them if I could see some of their art. A lot of the clients that we work with are corporate clients, so I've been doing this on the side for over 12 years now, and we've been in the retail store for 2 years. So our client base is quite large, and it reaches across Canada, and they're all mainly corporate clients. So they all have different needs and different price points, everything from the $5-10 range all the way up to the high range, depending on what their event is.
Mm-hmm. Exciting. Cool. So tell us a little bit about where did you grow up, and did you grow up in Winnipeg? What was that like?
No, I did not grow up in Winnipeg.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
not a city girl. um, so I grew up mainly in Lactavani. My dad worked for Hydro, and so they moved around a lot. But in the end, they ended up settling down in Lactavani. So I grew up on a farm, and I think that's where I get a lot of my hard work ethic from is my
Mm-hmm.
parents. Both my parents are very hard workers. I've always seen them, everything they do, they always give 110%. So that's just the norm for me. I don't know anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I never grew up in the city. I moved to the city to come to university, and it was actually really hard for me. I never rode a bus before. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what like there's ones that only stop at certain stops and things like that. I didn't know all all these
Right.
rules about city living, so it was kind of an adjustment for me moving here.
Definitely, yeah. And so you were an adult already, or 18ish, that kind of thing?
I was 18ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 18.
It's always interesting to know that perspective because I grew up in the city. I remember my grandpa taking me for bus rides, and I knew that I needed to have a quarter, a dime, and a nickel because he'd give me my bus fare, and I had to hang on to my bus fare. So I knew, like, I've always known the city really well. So I always like to hear that perspective of what it was like, coming to Winnipeg when growing up in a small town or reserves, right? And just that culture shock. You got something coming in there too. So
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna.
that's okay. So your career didn't start as like did you always want to have a retail store, or like what were you doing in university, and how did you get to owning a retail store?
No, I never. It was never a plan of mine to own my own store. I went to university. I received my Bachelor of Arts, um, and I was my first job. I worked at the University of Winnipeg. I was the recruiter, so I traveled all across Manitoba, promoting the University of Winnipeg. Um, and then I worked at the University of Manitoba as an education counselor in a number of different programs. So I worked
Nice.
with the engineering students, the nursing students, the Aboriginal business, the ABET program,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also worked for Norway House Cree Nation as their education counselor. And then after that, started I started doing my master's in my marriage and family therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to be a family therapist. That was my where I was heading,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started working in CFS because the families that I wanted to work with, I knew probably would have contact with that system, and so I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have experience that system to see how it worked and how I could best help the families. Um, and then my little one got really sick. She's 7 now,
Mm-hmm.
and she got sick when she was about 18 months, and I had to completely quit work.
Mm-hmm.
She was really sick, and so for about 2 years, I didn't work at all. I just focused on her
Mm-hmm.
and getting her better, and then eventually she started to be able to, like, I was allowed to bring her home from the hospital, but we had to stay at in our home, and so I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to a lot of places. I couldn't take her out, and there's no way I could have a like a regular real job,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm not one to. I can't just not do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always sewn on the side, and I learned from my aunt how to make star blankets, um, and so I just decided that, okay, well, this is what I can do, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go with it. And it's kind of really amazing how much it's kind of just taken off on its own, like Red Cedar Gifts.
Mm-hmm.
It started with me sewing underneath my basement stairs on this little tiny wooden table, And now we're actually in a retail store. So um, I don't I don't know other business, like I never planned to be a business owner. I don't know if that's the regular path that people take. I have no idea. I don't really do things normally,
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So, sorry, my phone always rang. Like I should have tried something else. I should have known better.
That's
It
okay.
constantly,
That's okay. I think it was
constantly
better
rang.
than the Be Live where we couldn't even connect with each other.
Yeah.
So that's I like that you brought that up about how it's not really the path that you were thinking. So in my life coaching, that's really all what it's been about, is just figuring it out as I go along. And there's been so many times where, deciding to be a not just an entrepreneur but a life coach, something that's completely different. Many people have never heard about it, and there were so many times where I thought I'm crazy. Like I can't even tell anybody what I'm thinking right now because I think I'm going crazy, right? And I think that's really the path of an entrepreneur. So opening up a
Yeah.
store, I'm sure you've had some of those freakouts.
Oh, more than enough. Everyone, I had to go speak at this youth thing yesterday, and I was thinking, like, what am I going to tell them? Like, what would I want to hear when I was their age? And
Mhm.
I want to say they were a little bit younger. Um, but I remember when I was a kid, and even just going to university, everyone kept saying, "Oh, you have so much potential, and you have so many opportunities, and you can do this, and you can do that," which you can. Like you can do absolutely anything you
Mhm.
want, which is a good message to send. But what they don't talk about is it's freaking scary. Like
Yeah.
whatever you decide to do,
Yeah.
like to to put yourself out there, to take that jump, to take that risk, just to even admit that's something that you really want. Like
True.
I think
Yeah.
we always do what we're supposed to do, like you know get a good job. And I mean, all those things are important. You want to have income for your family, especially if you have a family. That's a
Mhm.
responsibility that you need to take care of. But
Mhm.
just to even admit that to yourself, what you want, and to figure it out, it's scary. It's really
Yeah.
scary, and it takes a lot of um, courage to even look at it. So
Mhm.
I think that's something that isn't talked about enough,
For sure.
about
Yeah.
how scary it is.
I totally
But you
agree.
can do it. Like it's totally achievable.
Mhm.
It's not a walk in the park.
Yeah, definitely. You brought up so many things that I'm like, oh, what should I comment on? I want to talk about everything. So I spoke to a group of youth yesterday as well. So AMC conference. Is that the one that you were at by any chance?
Yeah.
Really? We must have
When
just
did you
missed each
go?
other. My presentation was at 9 and then again at 2. But I was kind of way on the side down the hall. So I had really small groups. Not a lot of people came, but we had amazing conversations. And my topic was what was my topic? Workplace etiquette. And so some of
Mhm.
these students have never worked before, right? So it was really good conversation. I felt like what I was able to contribute there was really valuable. And one of the things that I always like to share with people is that when I was young in high school and going through these stages, I thought everything I needed to know in life, someone will teach it to me, right? And so I always tell them that line because you learn quickly there's a lot of stuff I don't know and I need to know. So, how do I find out? And so, I always encourage them to ask questions. Don't hold your questions back. Always ask questions. So, what would
Mhm.
you say about, because and we talk about this often, a lot of the stuff that I'm involved in. So, talking with youth, talking with employers, and a lot of the non Indigenous community who want to hire Aboriginal people. What do we do? How do we connect with them and that sort of thing? And there's such a huge gap in Indigenous people really, almost. I mean, I hate to say it, but almost to be ready for that bridge, right? Because that's really what has to happen right now. But I think that in some ways, the Indigenous community is at a different level of trying to make that connection because of that system that you just described of how we're expected to do this. We're expected to go to school, get our driver's license, go to post secondary, right? All of these stages that there's too many day to day challenges, especially in the communities, that like people just can't, it's just not that easy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what would you add to some of that conversation?
Um, I think for the youth, like when I used to be a counselor at the universities, and it didn't matter what department I was in. Like I worked right with general studies students to, specialized like engineering students, fourth year engineering students. So they had been in university for a while already. And one of the things that always came up was how they didn't feel that they fit in,
Mm-hmm.
that the systems that, like, university is a system in itself.
Right.
Living in mainstream, like living in Winnipeg in an urban
Mm-hmm.
setting has a system. So there's all these systems that are around us, and we're expected to just pop into and
Mm-hmm.
know the rules and know how to navigate them and and know what's best to do in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you never grew up in that system and you're just kind of picked up and placed in there,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. And I think one of the main things that I stressed with my students was that um, my daughter's coming downstairs. She has no school today. um, One of the things that I stressed with them was that, you know, don't feel bad that you don't fit into the system.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never grew up in this system. This is
Mm-hmm.
not where you grew
Mm-hmm.
up. Um, and to be honest, it does take a toll on your self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
just know that you don't need to be a part of it if you don't want to. Um, when the students came to university, I said, you're here to learn skills. You're here to learn, engineering skills. You're here to learn nursing skills. You're here to whatever skill set that you've come here to learn. You need to learn them. You need to fit in the system long enough. I don't want to say fit in because we still keep our own identity, but we need to maneuver within the system long enough to pick up those skill set.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them were saying that their decision was to go back home,
Mm-hmm.
or to go to work with the Indigenous communities. Um, and so you don't have to fit in. You just need to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to maneuver it, pick up what you need from that system,
Yeah.
and then you can go and carry, and then you can bring what we have, our own system,
Right.
to whatever they're going to be. If they're going to be an engineer, if they're going to be a teacher, if they're going to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So they can take what they've learned from that education system, and they can take our own system, and they
Mm-hmm.
can bring it forward, you know, as something from them.
Mm-hmm. So, have you spoke or do you know your language, your family's language?
No,
Okay.
no, and it's
Yeah.
something that it does bother me. And actually, my youngest daughter she's 5,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, and she's like smart as a whip. And she has um, just shown such a desire to learn.
Oh,
She's
nice.
5 and she's downloaded an app
Yeah.
on her iPad,
Yeah.
and every day she asks, like, because you press the app and then it says the word,
Yeah.
and then so she practices.
Oh, that's
And she's 5.
beautiful. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's actually something I've been thinking about in the last little while, and just making sure that my kids, I may not be able to speak, but I want to try and give that to my kids.
Yeah. Definitely. I remember when I was in grade 8 or 9, I know that I heard my grandma speaking Soto to one of her, I can't remember if it was her sister, her aunt, or something like that. And I asked her if she would teach me, and she laughed and kind of put her head down and she said, no, you'll never use it. And of course, it wasn't until years later that I realized the era that she went through where, that was kind of drilled into her, right? And so, so yeah, interesting. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about mentorship, because I like that you talked about having that experience to be able to share with the youth now, but even through your previous career in helping young people identify, like, how do you work in this system, right? And a system that I often have trouble. I feel like I'm a bit of a mediator between the communities, right? I grew up in the city and didn't start learning about First Nation culture until I was an adult. And I think it was yesterday I shared on a message that I was an adult the first time I saw a chief in a headdress, and I couldn't believe that chiefs wore headdresses. But I was really embarrassed. I didn't tell anybody that I didn't know that. But it wasn't until I started learning about the history, realizing that there were systems in place created for me specifically not to know those things. And so, just kind of going through a lot of that learning. But so I was going to talk about mentorship. I recognize, and this is something again that I'm trying to help the community that doesn't understand culture and heritage and where Indigenous people are right now, is that when I was younger, for example, I didn't have successful friends and successful family members that, owned houses and owned cars and that sort of thing. So going through that in my generation, and even some of the generation coming up, are still the first generation in their families to be experiencing those things. So it's harder to have your family to turn to say, oh, I'm considering going to this school, or I'm considering going into this career, right? Like there's such a gap in having that. And I mean, I'm really big on mentorship and being able to bring people in different industries to, try and connect them to the youth as much as I can through my presentations and that sort of thing. But what would you add to that, to someone who doesn't really understand how we're the first generations going through graduating high school, driving and owning cars, owning houses? Like people just don't understand that. So what more would you add to that, do you think? Is that too big? I know I talked all over the place.
No, I would not want them to frame it as a negative thing. Like, even though, this is, something that someone may not have grown up with, doesn't mean that it makes them a lesser person, or they have lesser skills. Like, that's one of the things that, because I've worked with so many different students, like they're kids, like, we are smart, innovative people, like crazy talented, crazy, just, the skills and their artistic, portion. We are very, very skilled people. And we often look at things differently because we haven't grown up in that system, differently. And, a lot of times in a better way, like, obviously some of the systems that are in place are not working. And not only just for our people, but, for other people who are put into this system as well. So I wouldn't see that as a negative. I even though that's something that maybe they might, because in the system that they grew up in, you were supposed to have this, you're supposed to have a house, you're supposed to have a car, but it's not bad. I would just encourage them to see that it can be a positive. It's a completely different view of looking at things.
Yeah, for sure. I was the first person in my family, like through my grandparents and my parents' generation, to have a high school education and to attend a university and to own a vehicle, right? So those things always kind of stand out to me because other people are like, well, why? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, let me tell you. So on the Facebook page, the Indigenous Insights page, I put the update of our interview, and I said, what should I ask her? And so your sister said I should ask, who is your favorite sister? So how many siblings do you So how many siblings altogether do you have?
I have 5 brothers and 1 sister.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a funny joke because I also have one sister, and for like all of our birthday cards and stuff like that, we always write "Love your favorite sister." Do you guys do that?
Not so much.
That's cute. That's cute. So yeah. So what is it like to own a store in downtown Winnipeg? What are the amazing things about it? And what do you love about your work that you do?
Um, I absolutely love creating things. Like I love making things. I love um, people coming in and they want something really special for whoever, for an elder, for their niece who's graduating, for a baby that just has been born. And you want to give them that something that is just from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part I love. I love being able to be a part of that and just like create that and put a little bit of me in there. And um, because for me sewing is more than sewing. It's like when you it's a creation, it's an art, and when you make something, a little bit of you goes in there. So that's the part that I love. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love. If I could sit and sew every day, I would be in heaven. Unfortunately though, there's another part of business that you have to deal with all the bookkeeping and the all the other stuff. That part I could really do without.
Staying on top of the business. Yeah, no kidding.
Oh God, yeah.
So a few weeks ago, I spoke at an event. It was the 2020 event at the University of Manitoba. And I met with this young girl who, after the presentation, she came and said hi. And I believe she was in the business program, so the ABET program. And she
Hmm.
said to me, she said, "Are there a lot of Aboriginal businesses?" And I mean, she's asking me because of my connection to the Aboriginal Chamber, but we also, all of our members are not just Aboriginal, right? Some are Aboriginal businesses and some are not. And not every Aboriginal business wants to declare that they're an Aboriginal business. They just want to do business. So, how would you have answered that? And, this young girl wants to go into business. And I think, I mean, she wants to do it in a way where she's declaring, I'm an Aboriginal business. And what has that been like for you to sort of break into the world? Like here I'm doing a business, and so we talked a little bit about how you're first of all, am I really going to do this? Like, and I know for me, I was like, am I crazy? So what was that
Yeah.
like for you?
Um, so first of all, again, the business world is another system that's in place. And I, as an Aboriginal woman, am not normally even in the game. I'm not even in the ballpark.
Mhm.
I'm in three ballparks over.
Mhm.
And so just trying to get into the ballpark. When I go to meetings and I go to things, sometimes I'll go and people will be like, "Oh, the owner of Red Cedar Gifts is here," or they'll come into the store and they'll say, "Oh, can I speak to the owner?" And I'm like, "I'm the owner," and they look behind me to see if there's like a male, maybe. I don't know what they're looking for,
Okay.
but I get that a lot
Hmm.
when I tell them that I'm the owner.
Yeah.
And that just kind of speaks to how ingrained things are in that business world.
Mhm.
So I do bump into that a lot. Um, and I've been doing it for a while. So I did it from home for about 10 years, and then I did it in the store for 2 years. And just over recently, over Christmas time, I've kind of I took a little break and I stepped back, and because prior to those the first 2 years, I was kind of like trying to break into that system
Mhm.
and be a part of that. And there's norms within there, what's considered successful, what's considered to be a productive, successful business. um, Certain ways you're supposed to act, certain ways you're supposed to treat people. And I wasn't fitting in at all. And then I actually thought back to my students and how they felt in university, and they
Mhm.
didn't fit in. And I thought to myself, why am I trying to fit in here? Like, why am I trying to push all these norms and beliefs
Mhm.
on on myself about what business is and what to be successful, what that means in business.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of stepped back and I thought, you know what, like this is my life and this is my, this is me. Like this is not just
Mm-hmm.
a job. This is a part of me. This is a part of who I am, and I'm going to stop trying to fit into that kind of mainstream business, what is successful.
Yeah.
And so I made a few changes actually. And I made the decision that, other businesses may not think of me as successful in terms of, I don't know, I don't have three chains, or I don't, I'm not making multi-million dollars. But for me, as long as I have enough to, pay my bills, help other people, help other artists make that connection to
Mm-hmm.
consumers, um, then I'm good. And I'm just going to stop trying to um, even compare myself in
Mm-hmm.
that way.
So I
So,
like that you. I
to the
like.
young woman, I guess I would say there are a lot of Aboriginal businesses out there, and you don't have to do it mainstream way. You can do
Mm-hmm.
it in your own way, and you can bring yourself to that business. And what has happened, and I've always brought myself to my business, is that the customers that see that
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate that support you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that I know from the bottom of my heart. I would never, ever be here without the support of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they, continue to support us because I just, my heart is open. Like I
Mm-hmm.
give, I give from the heart. Anything they know when they come to the store, any gift that they, that goes out the door. It's not like Walmart. You don't come in and you know, buy whatever you need and
Mm-hmm.
it's put in a plastic bag. Like even, the stickers on the bag, the tissue paper, the way it
Mm-hmm.
goes in, like everything from the beginning to the end,
Mm-hmm.
I put my heart into, and I think people appreciate that.
And I think people recognize that because you definitely, you're very authentic, and people definitely recognize that. So that's great. And I like that you shared um, that description of fitting in, and how Aboriginal people are still. I mean, there's a lot of individuals who are trying to figure out, how do I fit in. But I like that you said that you don't have to fit in, right? Find your own way to blend, and find that way to cooperate in,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever way that looks. And that reminds me of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which is part. We talk about that declaration in my Indigenous Insights workshop, because really what I feel that declaration has done for me to learn about it is to recognize the words in the rights that we have in our uniqueness, and um, the right to be distinctive in our
Mm-hmm.
unique, um, whatever life. Like it's
Yeah.
really cool. I think that's really important. So the last question that I'm going to ask you, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about, is what would you say to yourself 10 years ago? So what would be some kind of advice, or like, hey, keep this in mind? Like, what would be that thing for you?
um, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned was, um, so when my daughter was really sick,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there was a few times there where, um, there was a few times there that we didn't know which way it was going to go. And I just remember, um, why do you ask such hard questions, Jen?
I didn't know it was going to be so difficult. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. I just remember praying to Creator and asking, okay, Creator, if I can just have her for one more morning, or if I can just have her for one more afternoon, or just through the night. And when you go through something like that, and I don't know why we as people, and as you know, as people in general, human beings, that we have to, and it's not everyone, but a lot of us have to go through something like that to really appreciate life. And so I think I would tell any age of myself, um, life is so precious and it can change at the drop of a hat. And a lot of things I didn't do when I was younger was because I was afraid, and that goes back to how people don't tell you, they tell you you have all this opportunity, you have all these, you can do this, you can do that. Um, but I was scared. I was scared to try it. What happens if I failed? What happens if, I looked like an idiot or whatever reason? I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And once I went through that with my daughter, I mean, that was to face that, to sit there and face that. You really have no fears after that, because that is, I think, the hardest thing to face.
Yeah.
And so after that, I just started living my life the way I wanted to, and I didn't let fear dictate what I did anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would wish that lesson. Maybe not the way I learned it, but I would wish that I would learn that lesson a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Like way sooner. When I
Yeah.
think about how much time I wasted living in fear about, you know, and it's not even failing, because I mean, like, it's not failure. You
Mm-hmm.
try it and it doesn't work out. So then you like, okay, so what did I learn from this? Okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
not do this. Maybe we'll do this a different way. And it's
Yeah.
not really failing. It's just
Right.
readjusting
Yeah.
to make it better. So
That's a great
I think that
message.
would be the lesson.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. That was obviously very from the heart again, as Chantal does. So thank you for sharing that.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, no, don't apologize at all. That's what the world needs, right? We need more real, and not just that stupid reality TV stuff. Like, this is reality, right? These are real things that we're talking about. And so thank you for sharing that. And thank you for spending this time with me on my interview project. And even through the Be Live, junk. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. That's kind of frustrating. But I'm happy to know you. I'm happy to call you my friend. And I'm happy to know that you're doing well and that your family is doing well. And yeah, thanks for being you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you're shining a light on exactly how you were talking about it. Like, there's so many people. Aboriginal people are crazy talented and we're doing
Yeah.
crazy things, and it's so sad that a lot of people aren't seeing that. So I really appreciate that you're highlighting it to everyone. You're like, hey, look at us. This is
Yeah,
what
for
we're
sure.
doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And same to you.
Okay, I gotta go
Okay.
though. The store's I'm supposed to have the store open.
Okay. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.